All right, welcome everyone. We are live. I want to thank everybody for joining us here. We are going to discuss some private eyes with Steven Sanzeri, and he's going to be commenting on Kenneth Maines. We're going to be looking at Kenneth Maines and what he did, what he didn't do for Dan Hennon, and I've got the 27 pages from Kenneth Maines to Mr. Dan Hennon, dated May 30th, 2019. Today is December 6, 2020, about 12:05 p.m., and I am joined by Steven Sanzeri. How are you, Steven?
Hi, Greg. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Should I call you Steven or should I call you Mr. Sanzeri?
No, Steven's fine.
Okay.
Greg, come on, man. No, first name.
I just see this, Mr. Dan Hennon, and just want to, say,
No.
how do I address a private investigator? Be cordial here, or do I be as professional as possible? But I'm just having a little fun. It's Sunday. It's been a crazy time, crazy day, crazy year. So I figured, why not end some of this craziness? We got about 1 month left, and then 2020 is done. And I know that you have experience as a private investigator, as a police officer, and as a bounty hunter. So I thought it would be good to get you on here and kind of get your view about Kenneth Maines. First, let me ask you this: Have you heard of Kenneth Maines before I sent you this 27-page report?
No, I've never heard of him before that.
Yeah, I've never heard of Kenneth Maines until Dan Hennon put this out and let us know who he had hired, and we got this 27 pages. So we kind of both sounds like both of us kind of started out with the same type of, well, okay, we don't know who this guy is. We don't need to know who he is really. What we need to know is, what does he say in these 27 pages? And is he going to come to the same conclusion that many of us have come to, that based on the facts that there is nothing to prove David Crowley guilty? Or is he going to toe the company line, the same line that we've been hearing? David Crowley is guilty. Don't worry about it. These aren't the droids that you're looking for. Just go on. Life is great. Just forget about 3 people dying. Forget about this little girl who had her arm actually ripped off, shot in the back of the head. Forget about the wife who was shot maybe twice, maybe three times. Both of her arms are gone. Let's just forget about all that. Life is good. Let's go on. David Crowley is guilty. No, we don't have a suicide note. No, we don't have any evidence that David Crowley is guilty, but screw it. Let's just act like he is, and we can all feel better about ourselves. And that's kind of where things got crazy, because once we were told to do that, obviously it's like a big middle finger kind of goes up, even if it doesn't go up physically. Mentally, it did go up for me, and I think it went up for a lot of people. So now that you know a little bit, and I'm sure once you got this 27 pages, Stephen, I'm sure that you looked into who Kenneth Maines was, what he's done. His resume is good. He's got a very extensive one, and almost had a TV show on the History Channel. Not sure what happened with that, but for whatever reason, when he read all the documents that Dan Hennon gave him, he decided that the police were right, and that that's basically it. He didn't call us crazy, but that's okay. We've been called worse. But so let me ask you this, Stephen. You've read these 27 pages. What are some of your thoughts about this investigation that Kenneth Maines did?
To support Kenneth's background, I can see he's more than qualified, from a former Marine to working in law enforcement to being a PI and working some big cases. And part of his mission is cold cases, and I think that's why Dan sought him out, was because he takes cases that have a possibility of being solved. I'm sure most of them are homicide cases that law enforcement overlooked or what have you, and he takes a case for plaintiff's family to prove somebody did it or what have you. And when I looked at the Crowley family case, and we had that podcast earlier last month, and then now looking at the investigation by Kenneth Maines, but I come out as a broad stroke, Greg, to open this up, is that I don't think he was looking outside the box.
Yeah, I don't either. But how far outside would he have needed to go to kind of, actually have a few more questions or keep an open mind about the possibility that David Crowley did not do this? I mean, what could he have possibly found that would have led him to think that David Crowley is guilty? Is it just because he didn't find any evidence of anybody else that could have done these crimes? That just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like David Crowley should be guilty unless we can find that somebody else is.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a burden of proof by him or it being a PI to prove this or that. It's him presenting new, in this case, new facts that lead to new evidence, new questions that lead, from suspicion to, nothing seems as it always is. And just like when they missed the bullet up in, is it number 57 up in the ceiling, we have questions of that trajectory, and was it a hesitation shot? And but it has David's DNA on that one. Mm-hmm. Okay, what's going on, and leading to also with Ranya's arm in her, was one thing, but the fractured rib, he brings that up, and what I'm getting at by not going and looking outside the box is taking that point of she had a fractured rib, and let's take a harder look at that. I mean, let's not just bypass that as was it from maybe a fall, or the dog stepped on it after she was deceased. I don't know. I don't think so. We've all had fractured ribs, or some of us haven't. It's not really that common. I mean, it's not a common thing to have fractured ribs. It just, I know a lot of people that haven't. So what caused that? Was it, and I was thinking it could have been, me thinking outside the box was, I still think maybe it was a hostage situation for a short time, like we spoke about. Somebody close to the family got access to the guns. They're holding the family up. They jabbed the weapon into Ranya's ribs, maybe. Just, that would freak a parent out. I mean, there's so many things that could have happened in that house, actions and everything else. It just isn't as simple as him going up and shooting his wife and daughter and shooting himself, and the end of story. It's not. That's not where it's at. It's much more. It's further than that.
It should be, and even when we look at what Kenneth Maines says here for him, for me, it is always about the truth, no matter where that truth will lead me to. So based on that, we kind of expected more. I thought, okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty cool. Kenneth Maines was hired by Dan Hinnon to give consultation about the allegations against David Crowley. On May 30th, 2019, Kenneth Maines sent Dan his full report, and I believe Dan said he hired him in March, so March, April, May, so he had about 3 months to kind of look at this stuff. Kenneth Maines had one investigative task: to give my professional opinion as to the cause and manner of death and any additional factors that may have led to the deaths. Now, that's where I would have hoped to see more here. So, we really, I was disappointed. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a bad interrupter, Greg.
That's
you know
okay.
that. I'm Mr. Interrupter, but I have a short memory sometimes with too much information. But just to elaborate on that, is when he mentioned he doesn't want to rehash information you as in Dan already know. Mm-hmm. Rehash. I mean, that's like, okay, you already know this. Well, no, we don't know this because we're hiring you to find this out. I mean, so right there, he's throwing Dan under the bus.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
that yeah.
It's a big disclaimer for him.
That's what. That's yeah. I didn't hear that. That's a good word for it. Exactly, disclaimer.
It's like, hey,
Yes.
you paid me $7,000, and I want to help you out, but let me just, let me stress. Here's what he also says: I want to stress that the conclusions of which I came up with are my opinion. I looked at the documents as an unbiased observer of facts in order to come up with the conclusion. I mean, right there, it's kind of like, okay, you can kind of see where he's going with this. He's going to.
Well, if you look up Webster's, the word opinion
hmm
says it is not based on facts. You know that, okay?
Right.
Opinion. The word opinion is a word, but it's just my opinion. It technically means you're not basing it on facts.
Right.
So that's. I mean, if you want to get that heavy into it, I wouldn't use that word. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's your investigative task that is not based on facts there, which is fine. I mean, maybe if that was his understanding, and if that was Dan Hinnan's understanding, that he was just gonna he was gonna read all of these documents and basically give his opinion on it. Then maybe that's what we really have here in these 27 pages. It would be nice if he could at least get the name right. I know in here there was one area where he was talking about David Crowley's project, and instead of calling it Gray State, he referred to it as Gray Space, and that that really ticked me off there, because like, okay,
Sure.
how serious is this guy taking it? We take this very, very seriously. To us, this is a very serious case, and I just kind of felt like, I think overall, I felt like Kenneth Maines just did not put a lot of heart and soul into this. I felt like it was just kind of going through the motions. I know a lot of people have felt like it was a big scam, that it was just, this guy, like, and when you think about it, you're like, wow, I wonder how many other people have hired Kenneth Maines for something similar and also gotten just a bunch of regurgitated crap that we could have gotten. Is there any chance, because Kenneth Maines is a detective, or was, that there was no way that he was ever going to disagree with the Apple Valley police because of that thin blue line that we always hear about?
Oh, absolutely. I crossed that thin blue line a long time ago. I mean, I had to. I even had friends that were cop friends when I was a cop that didn't really talk to me anymore. It was like I left the society. But you know what? I mean, they should know. I mean, it wasn't like I was now some defense attorney and this guy's a child molester and he gets off. I mean, everybody has a right to defense and all that kind of stuff. But being a former cop, I guess I saw not really great arrests and great reports and great PC and elements, but the DA filed on it and they plead to some crap, and the guy still has a little, low octane misdemeanor he should never have had.
Mm-hmm. Versus,
I've seen guys arrest a guy for having Berkeley Farms milk containers, for holding up shelves in a college dorm. I mean, it's a felony. So you get these guys every which way, and you got to give up the thin blue line when you go into these situations, because you are going against the guys that you worked with, that everybody's trained and everything else, and you're not accusatory of corruption or anything. Ignorance is no excuse. Laziness is no excuse, even though there's a lot of laziness in police work.
Mm-hmm.
That's as bad as no oversight in some situations. But at the end of the day, they do a pretty good job. And did somebody get to these guys? Yeah. And I've turned down cases. I've worked for guys like Manny Lopez in San Diego. Now I work with Bill Papenhausen, top guys in San Diego PIs, and they've turned down cases. And there's cases you don't want to. I've had cases with the chief of police that was involved in a murder. We took it. It was pro per with the DA's office, but we never would have taken that case otherwise. There's no way we can defend the chief of police in a murder case. I mean, and the guy was guilty, but I think he would listen. He Kenneth Maines. 15 minutes of fame up to this point has been something with the Zodiac Killer. Okay, 2017 made some sort of a deal with the History Channel, and listen, I grew up in the Bay Area as you did. We all knew about the Zodiac killer, and I have my thoughts on it. And I knew a very good PI that I worked with that actually was hired to look into that case by one of the victims' families, and it came up the same conclusion most of them did, with a little bit more. But he's writing on that and then throwing everything else, sweeping under the carpet. He's doing a disservice to his clients, because it's not a big pond, Greg, in the United States for PIs, bounty hunters, those kind of guys. I mean, you make a case. If it's on CNN, you're the PI that found the smoking gun. You're on CNN. You can write your book. It's like Gloria Allred or Mark Garagos. It's the same thing. When do you say you don't want to do it or whatever? Attorneys are different. It seems that they have, not that the law backs them more. They're attorneys. People are scared of them. They can do stuff in court we can't do. But when you get yourself involved in a case that's so high profile, like in the Crowley case is a high profile case, and we hope it gets higher a profile. That's what we want. We want people to look into this case. That's what's going to get more press on it, and the news gets involved. We got a lot of support in the court of public opinion. Starts looking at it. Maybe they open it up under pressure. Does anybody get nailed for it? I don't know. The thing is, everybody does their job. If you go into a PI and you cross that line as a former cop, not that you're going to get the big case. I was fortunate enough, I guess, to get the big cases. You got to keep going forward. You already swam with the sharks. You can do it again. And I've had the things, when whether threats or feelings or eyes on me or whatever. And I think every big case has that, no matter how you're involved. So yeah, I think he could have. He could have held back the reins on this case, most definitely.
Yeah, and that's sad. That's sad, because it's like he said, he wasn't hired to solve the case. We weren't expecting him to solve the case, but we were expecting him to contribute to it, to maybe add something to it. He basically, on page 27 at the very end, he says that that the police are correct in their final conclusion of murder/suicide committed by David Crowley. If a cover-up by the police is something that individuals want to point their finger at, I will say this unequivocally did not happen. A conspiracy by that many sworn police officers with nothing to gain is preposterous and did not happen.
Oh my God! Oh, Greg, what page are you on?
I'm on page 27. So if you scroll down,
oh wow,
yeah, if you scroll down there, spoiler.
Well, but you're really flying, because this is stuff later on. We'll go back. Well, we can digress later, right?
Yes, yeah, for
okay,
for
what
sure.
Page you say it was?
20 what? Page 27. Looks like the second paragraph of page 27.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
In my opinion, it is my opinion that the police are correct in their final conclusion of murder/suicide committed by David Crowley. If a cover-up by the police is something individuals want to point their finger at, I will say this unequivocally did not happen. A conspiracy by that many sworn police officers with nothing to gain is preposterous and did not happen, Stephen. It did not happen. Case closed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's an opinion.
Yes.
It's preposterous. It's an opinion, because preposterous is a word of feeling and of denial of any. It's preposterous. I mean, you don't say that's a preposterous home run. You say he struck out 4 times. It's a negative. It's my God, yes.
That's too funny. Yeah, and I mean, he has to mention a police cover-up, okay? Because at some point, sure, I'm definitely open to a police cover-up. Not saying that the police killed David Crowley. They don't have to be part of the crime. They can still be part of the cover-up, right?
Oh well, yeah. I mean, okay, that's not a large department. You know what? The chief, they don't even get to the chief. They get to the guy who's the head of the detectives, division. Investigation is the head of maybe there's 2 homicide detectives there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? They know how each other roll. Something comes down the line, they're both on the same page. Their boss says, hey, you know what? Blah, blah, blah. whatever. And it doesn't go any further than that.
Yeah.
I mean, when you work, I work patrol and the bureau. I had no idea what the bureau was doing. I mean, we didn't even care. I mean, you can nobody. There's the checks and balances. Nobody's watching over your shoulder every second.
Right.
So they could have sure. I mean, it's just like the Calaveras and Philip Marshall case. I know that went to the sheriff. I mean, that went to Coons. But this here might have just landed on the desk of the, maybe the investigator, because the chief's probably a good old local boy who was a quarterback at the, high school or something. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, really, that's how it usually is.
Right. Well, I mean, let's think about that. So you're a cop. You're investigating a case from day one. The very first day you walk into this crime scene, you see these bodies, you see all the stuff, blood written on the wall, there's blood on the laptop, blood here, blood there, blah, blah, blah. You're trying to do your job. Within 24 hours, your boss comes out and says that we're treating this as a murder-suicide. You're probably not going to do anything or say anything, at least publicly, that goes against that, right?
No way you will. There's no. Yeah, you're not going to get another job. That's the thing. If you rat cops out, you don't get hired by other departments, even if it was the right thing to do. So you're screwed. I mean, that really is true. I mean, you can't go anywhere, and if you do, you're really screwed. They won't cover you on traffic stops. So really, you're going to go along with the pro quo every time.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's these key words here on page 27 that Kenneth Maines mentions. Like you said, unequivocal, this is my opinion. But then he goes to the one thing that I was really hoping he would not go to, is the conspiracy. A conspiracy by that many sworn police officers. And it's like, okay, that's fine, because I can agree with that too. I don't believe that all of that many officers, however there are, whatever, 20, 30, I don't believe that many police people, part of the Apple Valley, part of the sheriff's department, even part of the BCA, I don't believe that they all conspired to cover up David Crowley's murder. But like you said, it only takes one at the very, very top. So it's just like there's not a lot of room left open for, okay, well, maybe it doesn't have to be a conspiracy between all of these cops. Maybe something at the very top happened. But at the same time, why even mention that? Why even look at that? You're not hired for that, right? He makes it very, very clear of what he's doing. Where is he getting these things that there's a conspiracy, et cetera, et cetera? It's from Eric Nelson's film. Eric Nelson's film called A Gray State. You could tell that he watched this and was one of those people that was influenced by it, and really, saw that movie, and that's basically it. And a lot of the things that we read in these 27 pages is all going to go back to that. But he goes a little further, and this is where I can clearly see that he watched a Gray State, and he completely buys into it. He says, "It is obvious to me that David Crowley was diving into a downward spiral of madness." Lots of these trigger words that people who want to believe that David Crowley was going crazy. Where is the evidence in any of these documents here that there was a downward spiral for madness? It's not there. We have the documents. We have David's his text messages, all of that stuff. We have all of that stuff from the last couple months. Nothing like that shows that he was going downward. He had everything to live for. This film was picking up. They were going to do something very powerful with it. They were going to make it into a TV show. Where is he getting this spiral for madness? It doesn't make sense. But then he goes on to say whether this was from the pressure of having to create the quote unquote Gray Space movie. So he doesn't even know that this was going to be turned into a TV series, and that's fine. I still think there's still a lot of people that don't know that Gray
State.
State.
Let me tell you, as a fledgling producer, and I did the Bounty Hunter television shows, the field producer for 2 seasons. That getting the show off and people interested, if you want to call that pressure, that's gold pressure. I mean, my God, if anybody even looks at it, you're going out for beers. I mean, that's a great time. It's the best time in the world if you're getting attention to your project. That's not being down on yourself or depressed. I mean, come on, Wow, every time I sell a book, I want to celebrate. It's crazy.
That's right.
No, this guy. You know what? He's looking at those are all week outs for, and it's like a 3.5 stage, or 3.5 act play or something. Or 4.5 act play. Wait, you can let us hang. Let us hang on this thing. I mean, he doesn't like I said, didn't think outside the box. I don't think he even climbed in the box. I think he just. And what did he get any what other sort of documents did he get from the police department?
Right. Nothing. He just
Nothing,
took whatever Dan Hannon gave him. I don't even know if he asked for anything else other than what Dan Hannon gave him.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The thing is that you go under subpoena. A case like this, you have somebody who's an attorney, and he writes a subpoena request for, the case is adjudicated, right? They're not looking at anybody else. I want everything, and you get everything.
Right.
And look through that. Just because Dan's got a lot of things on his plate. I mean, he handed him what he needed to hand him, and this guy here, he knows what Dan and all of us look at. That doesn't make us a bunch of conspiracy nuts, but that he looks at the film and he draws a conclusion that this guy, oh my God, look at this. But what's outside the box is that he's stepping maybe on somebody's toes, and maybe call it conspiracy or not. The directives for this crime scene wasn't Apple Valley Police Department. It was Apple Valley FBI office. You know what I mean, or what have you. Somebody was calling the shots above their pay grade in that town. It's obvious. I mean, it's not like he came out with. It's not. It was a copyright violation with Walt Disney. They probably have FBI agents on your porch. You know what I mean? It's not even that. It's just this guy. This guy did something that's probably even bigger and greater. Maybe and things happen, and our guy, Kenneth Maines, the investigator, is just there's nothing drawn. The conclusions have already been drawn. He's not even. I don't see anything in this report except things that he should have checked out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let me ask you this. How important is the why factor when you're looking at a murder case or a suicide case or anything? How important is it to understand why David Crowley would do this?
Yeah, I mean, okay. I don't see why he would do it. I don't see anything for why he would do this. Mm-hmm. I see no motivation for him to do what he did. That's my answer.
Now, if you couldn't see the why, would you then leave an open mind to say that David Crowley is not guilty? If you it just opens the whole. It's like opening every door and window in that house. Yeah.
What kind of fleeing leech came in there and killed that family under, I mean, we spoke about God, all is great, and the misspelling of that on the wall. I mean, these are mistakes that weren't caused. These are mistakes that weren't caused by that family. Somebody was in there and did this. Mm-hmm. There's too much blood spread around. The DNA, that Kenneth points to DNA on the firearm, David's weapon,
mm-hmm.
to the magazine for that weapon, casings, and the safe was a push button a pad safe with numbers, and that David's DNA was on all of those. Also, there was 2 to 3 or more others on all of those. And we spoke off of the air earlier, and I told you this when I had my firearms in the house, and I had, in the old days I didn't have a safe, just had a cool looking wooden cabinet. But when I got my safe, my wife. I mean, I don't think anybody ever got touched. I mean, nobody touched it. I mean, wow. So, who was in there? Who's the other DNA? Is there any? In a scene like this, they should have, extended it out to test for maybe matching that up.
That would have been nice. That would have been great.
Yeah. So with Camille, nobody. I mean, I don't know if it's like you said, she shot his weapons or he trained her. He may have. I had my wife shoot a couple times. It happens. But how much access did she have to that? And who's the other DNA? Listen, if you got 2 to 3 or 4 DNAs, and there's going to be more fingerprints that'll match up with the DNA on that.
She was trained, and maybe Sophia or Catherine, maybe they have that date. There was, I think it was 2009, that David and his wife, they did training. I believe it was for concealed carry. But they do have some training on that, and there's video. Obviously, there's video of her, shooting guns. So she definitely knew how to shoot. Both of these people, David and Camille, both knew how to shoot. We definitely know David did. How we have 2 missed bullets, how we have 2, 3, I guess, if you count, the one that goes into the basement. There is an unspent round that is found on the living room floor, and then we have the bullet that was shot into the living room ceiling. That's 3 misses, basically 3 missed shots. And but yet David is this marksman. How does he miss shooting the dog? That's impossible. No one's buying that. I'm not buying that one at all. But the reason I ask about the why in this case is because Kenneth Main says that question, we may never know the why. And we hear that so often, and it's like, okay, if you don't know why David Crowley did this, why the hell are you assuming David Crowley did this? It doesn't make sense.
Exactly. And then there's one more point too also that Ken, I didn't see the police report that Ken brought up. Is that David's garage was, immaculate, totally organized, perfect, every tool, everything in every place. Yet where he kept his firearms or his night vision stuff or whatever had to do with paramilitary stuff was a mess. I don't see that. You don't do A to Z with how you keep your stuff wrapped tight,
That is
so having a garage, and he's a military guy.
Yeah.
I mean, my weapons, your weapons, everybody's tools of the trade are put away immaculately polished. So you don't especially for a man who, if he's preparing for, end of days or something, where he's going to have his guns, everything's going to be organized, man. Right. Not his garage with his, 3/16 wrenches. That doesn't make sense. And I would have looked into that. That means somebody went through his house. You could go into a bedroom and toss stuff around in 2 minutes to make a guy, look like he's seesawing on, dual personalities because his kitchen you could eat off of. I mean, that's stupid. He was organized. He was an organized guy. Filmmakers are organized guys. You have to be. You have to have. It's all about organization and things in order, and chronological order, and the best movies are shot in sequence.
Yeah.
And that's how you do it. This guy was that. He was that guy.
That's what makes, when we look at David Crowley's house, because we've had a lot of commenters. Of course, these are usually people who want to think David Crowley is guilty, but the house is messy, it's so messy, this and that. But when you look at how organized David was, it makes me wonder if the reason the house is messy is because people are going through the house looking for something, because there's a struggle, all of these different things that people just don't want to even think about.
Oh, exactly. And the thing is, too, it's like with Phil Marshall. I just digress to that because that's one of our other topics. It's the same situation, basically. Is with Phil Marshall, you know what? They took the computer. They took this. We don't know what's in these houses. We don't know because they left Crowley's computer stuff. Maybe they knew which one to take. Mm-hmm. I don't know. And if you're a filmmaker, I can tell you right now, you got you got terabyte, hard drives.
Yep.
I mean, come on, you can't hold the material on thumb drives. So where are those at? There's you look at it as his occupation, Not that he's just some kook who made a movie because he was in Afghanistan twice and married a Muslim. I mean, that's the narrative on this.
Right.
I mean, you know what? A lot of people believe it. You know, hey, listen, shit, it's the war. Oh, it's terrible. He came back. He flipped. Man, you know what? It's not. He wasn't on, steroids, and losing weight can be a little bit of stress and all that stuff too. They found no meth in the house. They found no, cocaine. He smokes marijuana and mushrooms. As far as I know, you're not going to lose much weight on those. So, and the thing is the organization of his life is what I got out of this investigation with Kenneth Maines reported. I would have looked into that, like we spoke about.
What do you mean Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, Kenneth Maines Kenneth was talking about the garage being all tidied up, and all of his weapons and things in the house that related to his military stuff. That was a mess.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Why I question why the difference. Yeah.
Which I don't know if Kenneth Maines knows what movie props actually look like, but what he was basically seeing is props for David's past projects, all that stuff. The only military thing that I saw in the basement was his bag, and I'm not exactly sure what you call that, but it's a big green bag, and it looks like it has a bunch of probably his real stuff in there, and it's right next to one of those doors. But yeah, I didn't see anything like that. I mean, and when you look go ahead.
Sure. Well, the military props. I mean, you can have 5, 6 plastic M16s. You're not going to have them laying around the floor and stuff. You're going to have them laid up against the wall. And
right.
I mean, that's what I'm getting at. It didn't follow what I would think. And I wonder where he got some. Sounds like he maybe got some other pictures.
Yeah, I just sounds like he was just kind of reaching. He's like he went through the photos, and that was basically it. There really wasn't too much to it, but yeah. So now that we've cut to the chase there, though, I do want to go and I'm going to go and jump back a little bit back into some of the other things here that Kenneth Maines has said, and feel free to stop me at any time here, and we'll definitely. Now, I also want to thank everybody who's in our chat room too, and if anyone in the chat has any questions or comments or anything like that, please make sure to go ahead and point those out, and we will continue on here. Let's see. Mr. Maines said if I were the lead investigator, he'd want to know as much as possible about David and Kamel's upbringing, religion, schooling, education, family, mannerisms, hobbies, propensities, etc. As a consultant, I am and can only be concerned with the information provided to me. In this case, we have 3 victims. Now, that's the key word, 3 victims. Is he talking about the family dog, or is he saying that David Crowley is also a victim here?
No, he's talking about David, not the dog. So he's calling them victims. I mean, probably using it as a loose term, is like them. That victims is that they suffered a hardship as a victim. That's what he's probably getting at, I guess. Greg, you there?
I might have lost. I don't know. Testing 1 2. Test 1 2. See if anyone is there. May have lost my connection. Let me know if you can hear me. If anyone in the YouTube chat can hear me too, please let me know there. That was weird. Had a little weird drop there for a second, but that's okay. Not going to stop us, no matter what. We will keep on here. So, Steven, if you're still there, if not, try to jump back in, but hopefully that we didn't lose the whole stream. But this is why we do a backup as well. So
Oh, there you are, Greg.
Are you
I'm
there?
sorry,
Okay.
Greg. Something happened. I lost you.
Yeah, I lost everything too. So I'm just making sure everything is okay.
Oh,
The
good.
chat room is still
Good.
looks like it's still live. Okay, so it looks like we can hear you. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Cool.
that was a little weird, but that's okay.
That's okay.
We'll chop it up to Paleo. We'll just blame the dog for that too. So we were saying we have
Yeah.
3 victims here, which I found very curious. But yeah, the way that you talked about why he would say 3 victims, okay, that does make sense to me. Um,
Yeah. Sure, I think so.
I think it is very important to also know. I think he brings up a great point here to know about David's past, his upbringing, their religion, etc., etc. Especially when we're talking about some of the things that we see in that house. You know, at first I wasn't sure if David was a Christian, and of course, you know, anyone can call themselves a Christian. It doesn't mean much. Only God really knows who
Sure.
is and who isn't. But if you call yourself a Christian, you know, I'm going to take that seriously. I'm not going to just say no, David wasn't a Christian because of this and that. I don't know. Only God knows. But it is very curious because you have a lot of people who, you know, and rightfully so, who are looking at every angle. Okay, well, maybe it was this. Maybe it was Kamel's family. Maybe, you know, it was some type of a Muslim killing. You know, David married this Muslim lady, and Kamel's parents didn't like that, which all makes sense until you actually figure out that none of that is true. The families had a very good relationship. Kamel's dad bought David a car, I think back in 2009 or 2010 or something. You know, they were very close, and so all of that stuff turns out not to be true. And Kamel went to a Christian school while in Texas. I mean, so I don't know exactly. I understand why Kenneth Maines is saying if I was a lead investigator, why I would want to know as much as possible. But that's talking about Jim Gummert, and I think Jim Gummert did know all of this stuff. I think he did know what type of upbringing they had because he had spoken with David's family. He spoke with Kamel's family. So he did know all of this, and they still couldn't prove that David Crowley was guilty. And I think that's where a lot of people, you know, they forget that big point of why did the investigators come to the conclusion that David Crowley was guilty? And the only reason is because they couldn't find any evidence that would lead them to think that somebody else was guilty. But how much did they really look into it? They spent a lot of time looking into trying to prove David Crowley guilty. And once they realized that they could not prove David Crowley guilty, how much time did they spend trying to look into other possibilities? Zero.
Well,
Zero.
Well, you know, when DNA started really working in crime scenes and stuff, there was a big reliance on that, which there should be in a lot of ways, not for the most part, but in a lot of ways. But you still have a crime scene, and a crime scene like this, it's like this, Greg. You have 4 or 5. You have 5 pieces of butter. It gets warm, everything kind of melts together. So when you're at the crime scene and you see all this laying around, you see the bodies and bullet holes everywhere. That's you take pictures. That has to soak in. You just don't figure things out all the time, and it'll soak in. It might be in your sleep overnight as an investigator. It's happened to me the case I'm working now many times. I'll wake up and there's something that clicks, and so those little pads of butter over time just melt, and everything kind of starts coming together. So they draw conclusions too early, and so now we're going to rely on DNA. It's going to go off to the FBI lab or whatever it's going to be. Okay, we got blood and this and matching that, and there's going to be something in there, whether it's a bullet in the ceiling or what have you. And we're not for sure honest or not with DNA or any DNAs on that at all. We're going by what they say. But let's say benefit of the doubt has David's DNA on it. But they missed that bullet when they first had the pads of butter out there when they walked into the house.
Right.
The bullet in the ceiling, they missed that. So, see, I mean, and so when Kenneth Maines looks at this case and he's drawing conclusions and his opinions on this, there's things that he's saying that have already been done, basically. These things that he's looking at that should be questioned further, but he's not he's not questioning it. They didn't investigate it for any further on these things, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
The case changes as you look at it.
Yeah, he's not critical on the results. He's not critical on what these conclusions are. No criticism towards that. There's some, oh well, yeah, they should have done this too. They should have done that too.
Sure.
But it's not like, okay, well, wait a minute. They didn't find David Crowley's DNA on that gun, on the actual outside of the gun. They didn't find his blood on any of those bullets. These are simple things that we didn't want to say, hey, Kenneth, this is what we see. Tell us what you see. We were hoping he would see this stuff on his own. I have no training in this stuff. A lot of the people who have helped us with this case have no training in this stuff. How is it that we can see these simple things and these trained investigators can't? I'm sorry, I just do not buy that. It's hard for me. These guys know what they're doing. We've gone over, all of the great things that they've done, all the cases that they've looked into, and you're telling me maybe a dozen people who have no experience in this can see some of this stuff, and these guys can't? There's something really wrong there. That's frustrating to me. Very frustrating.
Well, it goes back to the bullet in the ceiling they missed. That's one of the first questions things we spoke about. And would you miss that? If you're really looking around, you got a bullet, a hole in the ceiling is not a common occurrence. It's even that size. You should notice that. And then they found out later about it. Also, as you're dealing with it. I mean, how many homicides has that town had or city had in the last 20 years?
Right.
It's like anything else, you just because you go to the academy, it's practice, I mean.
It's crazy. It's just crazy when you think that we gave him, even if he just would have looked at this 40-page document that showed the DNA test results. I was expecting him to say, oh, well, how come there was there's a DNA that it doesn't match Kamel. It's 2 or more, but it doesn't match 2 or more people that were in that house. These simple things that we were hoping that he would at least acknowledge them. At least say, yes, you know what, I still think that the cops did a great job, but these things are kind of weird. These things kind of stand out. He goes through some of that, right? But not on the things that I was really hoping, not on the actual smoking guns that might get people to question what the police say. It's just more of just simple, smaller things that, okay, well, if they would have looked into David's past, maybe they would have found out that he was always crazy or something like that. I mean, it leaves those doors open, but it doesn't leave any doors open to say that anybody other than David did these crimes. So the biggest thing, I guess, that Kenneth Main did was help the people who still think that there was a pact theory between David and his wife to kill their family. I guess at least Kenneth Mains agrees with us on that there was no pact.
Yeah, no, exactly. The thing is, as an investigator, you talk. I would have spoke to both parents, and I would have spoke to all of them myself. That's part of your investigation. Right. You go out. This is what you get. This is what you get paid for. You do interviews. You write a report. That's it. This is what he said. He should. We've made a lot of cases that the cops couldn't make because the guy all of a sudden remembered something, or we asked the right question and got the best answer. I mean, it happens. Otherwise, there'd be no private investigators around. They do a pretty good job. I mean, it's you ask the hard questions, and it happens all the time in cases. And so this guy here is a cold case PI. His goal should have been to get this, you want to make some bones, get a couple of these cold cases reopened, and yeah, there was probably something blocking him a little bit. And it wasn't the Zodiac case or, BTK or something. So maybe it wasn't big enough for him to, throw his chips in on this deal. I don't know. But he sure doesn't go out, like I said, doesn't go outside the box. I would have, like I said, I would have called Kamel's parents, father, mother, David. I would have met with them, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Said, hey, is there something there? I would have met with all the neighbors. Neighbor next door that called on, that saw the presents in there, or the presents outside with the windows open inside. To all the neighbors.
Yeah.
Why not?
And then maybe that was our fault for not hiring somebody who would actually do that, or who would do that without us kind of hoping that they just would. If I guess because it
that's part. That's what I do now. I mean, it's the client I work for now. No, it's you just don't know your rights. But a private investigator is not. He's not. This guy wasn't hired to, review the. It sounds like he's hired. He thought he was hired to review the report. That's not anybody to review the report.
Right.
You got to take the report and break it off in pieces and go talk to people that are in the little pieces. You got to knock on doors. I mean, that's how. There's nothing new. There's not going to be anything new unless you go out and beat the street. You can't get anything. It's hard to get anything new. You could be, a subjective or even objective from a report, either way you look at it. Okay, well, you got to go out and have, a practicality and touch and feel and talk to the old man across the street. You see it in the movies all the time, and it's kind of, we laugh, but it is true. The old guy heard something because he was in, aviation, and he knows when the flaps are going down in the wind and what knots the plane's doing because he was in it for 30 years.
Right.
Those are the little things, the little nuances that make this case. This guy doesn't have a bag of nuances.
It's crazy. It's so crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Just looking over some of the other pages here of what the investigation was, what he was doing, what he thought he was doing, and let's see here. Here's another one on page 7 where he praises the police job of what the police did. So here we have another area where
how many times did he kiss her? How many times did he praise them? I mean, I don't mean to laugh. I mean, wow.
Yeah, I would have to.
Is that the second?
Yeah, that's the second time so far. But if we were to probably do a little tally on it, I'm sure we'd find a ton of them in there too.
Yeah. We know. Yeah, we know where the bread's getting buttered. Okay.
I mean, how do you miss the bullet that is later going to be tied to David's daughter? You miss the bullet that is somehow going to be tied to David. You don't find those, but yet somehow he's still praising their investigation. Extremely meticulous and documented very well. That's what he's saying on page 7. And we know that isn't true. We know that they messed up. They did a lot of things wrong here. We know that. Missing 2 bullets is a big deal. Having to come back, not because you wanted to come back to make sure you didn't miss anything. You had to come back because people told you that there were bullets there. That's the only reason why they came back. That doesn't sound like it's documented very well, in my opinion. I mean, he also.
Well, what?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Quickly, just to go ahead and give Apple Valley, whatever kudos. It's just like I said. Bottom line is they're not experienced in anything like this, so they are going to miss some things.
Let's see. Another thing here is Maines believed the funding for David's project was quote-unquote somewhat faded out. By this I mean that there were some investors, friends, and associates of David's and his project that bowed out or were forced out by David. So that's another curious thing, because I don't know if that would have been in some of the documents or anything that Dan gave him. So that goes back to your theory of it wasn't just like Dan gave him a bunch of stuff and he was to just read it. At some point, he did do some outside investigation or snooping or something like that to find these other things. But it's like going on to Netflix and watching a documentary is not, it doesn't take that much effort. It's not putting him out a couple grand.
It does. Well, no, it doesn't at all. And there was something I was going to mention. We keep going about the film and such, but go ahead and
No, it's okay. Yeah, sorry.
keep
Sorry
going.
if I interrupt you, because
Oh
I
no,
know
no, no,
people.
you're fine. No, you're
What the
fine.
one what this point is here is people want to hear your view. They don't want to hear my. They've heard my view. I've already done 20,000 videos on this stuff. They want to hear your view on this case. They want to understand, from a private investigator's point, what are the things that you do? What are the things that you don't do? Where did Kenneth Maines go right? Where did he go wrong? So at any time, if you think of anything like that, go ahead and just stop me while I'm going on here.
Oh, I mean, well, since you're bringing that up, basically, a private investigator is not a police officer. A lot of them are former police officers or private citizens. If they're asked to leave your property in the backyard because they got a camera, they have to leave. They can't break the law that way. What they do is they investigate a situation, whether it's civil or criminal, and come up with a determination that is, either with or against the law enforcement, or it's right or wrong, but very, subjective. Like I said, there's objective in there too. You lay out the facts, and one of the biggest things with private investigators, like with Ken here, I'm not degrading him. It's just the biggest thing he's doing. But you give an opinion. You can't give an opinions. Is really, you be really careful with it, and you can based on experience. But basically, is you're like you're telling a story. You're writing a screenplay. You're in it, but you can't say I, me, I did this necessarily. You just take what they tell you, and put it into third person. And when you see an opening where there's a question, you take that question and you just move off and put it aside and investigate all of that. And then you may have to knock on doors then, like with talking to the neighbors up there and such. And it's just so surprising, which it is, and I should say, I expect it when we do investigations, that we always find out something new that turns something around. And like my old PI partner said, as long as you got somebody to talk to, the investigation's open. There's a lot of people to talk to on this case, Greg. I would have spoke, to everybody and anybody, even a phone call. You can admonish them on a phone and in a phone call and take notes and investigate. On that phone, those notes are still admissible in court. You don't have to drive out to their ranch in Nebraska, 400 miles away. It's not like that. So I mean, it's and you do find out, because once the police are on the scene, the bodies are there, the coroner's coming out, detectives are there. Everybody has done their job. They got these little jobs to do, and everybody's job's gone. The evidence guys, the ME's there. Everybody's done, and pretty much the patrolman saw this. He's out now. He's a patrolman again, and the detective that was there was helping out the homicide detective. Might have been a robbery detective, and that robbery detective now has got to do with robberies and burglaries, and so it kind of lands back on one desk or so, and from there, that's where it ends up. And then you have the DNA and all of the forensics and toxicologies and everything is done through labs behind that, and they put it together. But there's so many unanswered questions in between, and there always is.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, it's kind of summing it up, I guess.
That's good. That's a good way to sum it up there, I think.
Yeah.
So aside from Mains's praise for the Apple Valley investigators who, couldn't prove David Crowley guilty, they just would assume David Crowley was because they couldn't prove anybody else was, even though they didn't look for anybody else. Maines, also thinks that David's project was fading out and all that. We know that's not true. There's nothing to back out that the thing was fading out. It looks like it was actually ramping up. And if anyone has read David Crowley's script, I won't spoil it here for you, but it's definitely worth reading, and I think it's really, really good. And this is all way before David was taking the script and turning it into a TV series. So I would have loved to have read some of the stuff that came later on, maybe in the last three months. And it seems like that's what David was actually working on in those last 3 months of his life, was some type of a treatment that would focus on a Gray State TV series. But he was also focusing on the documentary that was a companion piece to this whole project that talked about what is really happening, how it relates to what is going on, et cetera, et cetera. So very knowledgeable guy. I didn't see any darkness that was overtaking him, as the cops have said, but it seems like Maine saw that too. Everything is downward, everything is going down, and it's just the narrative that they just want to hold on to. That's what is fading out here. Anyone who thinks that David Crowley is still guilty at this point, almost six years later, the narrative that David Crowley is guilty is what is really fading out. And as the years go on, that will fade out even more. The Justice for David Crowley group is growing. The number of people who have questions about this case is growing. The number of people who are still watching Eric Nelson's film and then coming into the group and asking questions, that number is growing, and it's going to continue to keep growing. Our podcast numbers, which we've just started, we do one podcast every month, those numbers are growing, and it's worldwide. So it isn't just like this is a small case. It's not getting the traction that it definitely should, but I do think that a case like this is one that is going to age like fine wine. It's going to get better. It's going to be more potent as these years go by. You're going to have a lot of more people saying, what the hell? How did we miss this case? How did we miss that? How are we still going to hold on to the desperate theory that David Crowley is guilty 5, 10, 20 years later? It's going to be very, very hard, and I think that's why they're hoping. A lot of evil people are just hoping that we just stop and that we just quit talking about this. But it's such a slam dunk case that I think that's why it brings so many new people, so many great people into this case, and I'm definitely glad to have you part of this team, Stephen, here. Regarding the blood writing, this is another thing that Kenneth Maine said. This is done to either stage the scene to look like something it isn't, because it is the motive for the event, or it is for shock value. So here he's claiming either David Crowley staged this scene, that's why there's blood writing, or it's for shock value. What do you think about that, Stephen? Do you think David Crowley would do this to stage his own crime scene, or for shock value, or maybe something else?
No. Well, first off, we'll get this straight. He didn't do it, so we'll forget about shock value, any value, and we've talked about that because it's misspelled.
Right.
And somebody who spoke in the language and married somebody from the faith, and all of his grade is not going to be misspelled. So it takes him out of the whole picture as far as I'm concerned. I bet the family farm on that. Secondly, is if it's misspelled, was it? That goes to. I think it was somebody close to him. We know there was some estranged relationships around the project of the Gray State, and did the deep state or whoever called the shots use the people closest to him to kill him? Very possible, because they're not professionals. They had access to things. They probably knew where his guns were at, all this kind of stuff. They could be looking for something. It may also realize he sent these amateurs in there that were related to this. They didn't find the right things. Maybe that's why his computer and stuff was left in there. They got nervous. They're not, And so the crime scene being messy, it wasn't like we always go back to Philip Marshall type clean hit. Is that it wasn't a black ops team that went in there and did a surgical hit on the family, because they would have taken the dog out probably too, just like they always do. So I go back to it's somebody closer to David and the family and the project, and they did it for money, and they know there was some estranged relationships there, and that's where it went to. And so the guys who pulled the triggers, and we have those rounds that have missed and everything. Man, if David is that kind of soldier, which he was, and a hard charger, and that if he was that crazy, which he had the tenacity, the motivation, the strength, he's seen death, he's already shot his wife and kid, I don't think he's going to have a problem putting one bullet in his head. I mean, I'm not speaking for him, but I mean, if you add those emotions up and package that like a little rubber ball and it explodes, he's got nothing to lose, and he knew that the minute he shot his wife and kid. So missing yourself with a hesitation shot, no way, Greg, no way. This is definitely a hit, and it's an unprofessional trigger on the hit.
Is there any way, since we know that Kamel's DNA, her blood DNA, was tied to 3 bullets,
right?
Does that show that she was shot 3 times?
Well,
is it
Sophia brought Catherine and Sophia brought that up 3 times. On Kenneth, you are correct. On Kenneth's report, he says twice. I think this. I don't know if he's trying to be fancy, do a little picture of the skull or whatever. I think that Catherine might have been right, but the 3 times, because there's 2 bullets, the one in the bottom basement, the one that went through the ceiling. But that would have to be 3 times the Camille, which would then bring it to the 4 shots that were struck. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, his is different from what we spoke about earlier. Possibly 3 shots, which it could have been. Now, was that a hesitation shot over her head that went into the ceiling? I don't see David. No, he shoots somebody 3 times in the head. I think that switches from, some sort of murder passion, a religious thing to hatred. You know what I mean? I mean, wow, 3 times in the head. That's like hatred now. So much. I mean, there's much more than that. I mean, there's some rough edges there, Greg, on that call.
Well, yeah, and it's like, okay, what is the actual motive? What would be David Crowley's motive for doing this? And I don't feel like we got that from Kenneth Mains. I don't feel like he gave us a real motive and said, hey, this is why. There's really nothing there. It's the same talking points that the police say in the slop-umentary. It's the exact same thing. It's nothing new here.
Well, okay, let's talk about what we've been doing with Philip Marshall, Haney out of Amador County.
Mm-hmm.
Philip Haney, yeah. Philip Haney, DHS guy, gonna get married, talking to his buddies about this, but coming out, with a new book was about Homeland Security and Hillary and everything. And he ends up found 1 bullet wound in his head on his RV up in Amador County. Philip Marshall wrote a book, The Big Bamboozle and Old Barry Seal Connections, and him and his kids and the dog are all shot. Now, our guy David Crowley's in the same realm. Something is connected to that also, and now he's another one who just shot himself too. Come on, people.
I know.
I mean, when's the last time you heard about your neighbor shooting his kids and the dog and everybody? It doesn't happen, man. And if you want to go with Chris Benoit with the WWE, which is very sad, the steroid thing, he killed his wife and daughter and stuff. But even that, I mean, I looked into that just to look at the wrestling thing. It just, that was steroids. I mean, that's a drug and such. But we're not. He wasn't connected to the deep state or Illuminati or pissed off Hillary and Bill.
He wasn't, but Vince McMahon, his boss, could have been the owner of the WWE. Could have been. Yeah. That's a whole nother conspiracy.
Yeah. You know what? That's another story, probably. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Vince McMahon. But everything we look at is, we're asking the hard right. These are the right questions, and people just look into these things, and it's a Mariposa, and it goes into what we're dealing with, Ronnie Cole to Jerry Cox, onto what I did, onto Mark Argaletta's murder, to Judge Salas's son's murder in Jersey the same week by apparently the same guy. This just doesn't happen. This is normal. This is just not how it works.
I mean, is there any police training where they say, hey, if you walk into a house and you see a gun next to next to the guy, then you just automatically think that he's guilty, that he killed himself and he killed everybody else in this room. What type of training are we having here? Is this a big issue of just, you know what, police need to be trained differently to just say, you know what, don't forget, you are innocent until proven guilty. So don't just walk into a room, you see a gun next to a person, and think that he is the person that shot everybody else up. Is this a training issue?
Oh, you know what? It's kind of like racial profiling or something like, pulled people, black folks that are pulled over and all that, and it does happen. And I guarantee as a cop, I never saw that as that's this is what you can do. I don't care if you're black, white, or yellow. If you're driving at 2 a.m. in a neighborhood that doesn't have any traffic, you're going to get stopped for something.
Right.
Okay, we'll figure it out because it doesn't matter. We can't when we're behind a sedan back in the day. We couldn't tell black, white, or who's driving the car from 40 feet away behind them. Come on. Same thing here. There's prejudice and bias. But if I walk into a crime scene, and when I do these cases, I put myself in those crime scenes as if I was just walking through by myself, as a ghost, and I just see these people laying there. What would I see? And putting this together, and no, I wouldn't see. If I saw a gun and saw 3 people there, I would think homicide first. Absolutely not. Well, let's see, shot. Maybe the wife shot him.
Right.
Maybe maybe it's not just the guy. It's like the guy's cheating on the wife. It goes both ways. Same thing here. Maybe she shot him. Maybe she shot herself and she fell forward. I don't know. But all I know is there's a gun and there's 3 bodies there. Wow. I would first think it's a homicide. It's definitely a homicide because it's not free suicide, right? It really, they're not going to take turns. I don't mean to be facetious. But it's a homicide. So from there, what you do is you're looking at it, in the pictures and everything else. But it's like what you're doing. I bet you and Catherine and Sophia spend more time on this case than almost anybody on this case. And you know what? You guys are smart, and you're doing other cases. You're going to see things, and it's not a matter of the academy teaching this and that. You know what? The academy. I tell you what. There's the homicide block in the academy when I went through. I think was probably 5-hour course, man. Seriously.
Wow.
I went to San Jose's academy. It's not so much you got to learn as a police officer. You don't learn anything really until you end up on the street, and you start figuring it out. And because no two cases are exactly the same.
What are the type of stuff that they teach you there in the homicide? I mean, and that's different to when you are out on the streets.
Oh, well, you know what? The first thing is evidence, chain of evidence, handling evidence, photographing. Because once you take the body and everything away, you cannot recreate that. You know what? That's the thing. Is like with Philip Marshall. What they were in and out of there, like 6 hours or something, Greg? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? I would have been in there for 2.5 days. Are you kidding me? I mean, no. Listen. You got a small county with two innocent kids and a guy. And let's just put it this way. You're the chief, and let's say I look at this, and I'm the chief. Whether it's Philip Marshall or I'm the sheriff of Amador County with Phil Haney, who's related to DHS. I mean, he's one of the guys who invented the Department of Homeland Security, literally. And you got David Crowley, who's this guy, going to film school. This guy's a serious guy. Does this thing. You know what? It's like an athlete or an actor getting arrested for cocaine. It's going to get more publicity. It's juicier. It's a better story. It goes up. It gets printed above the fold. That's what they want. Police chiefs are the same way. So for me, if I was a police chief and I wanted that, next be the county sheriff, I want this case on the front page, man. I want this done right. I want everything done right. I'm not going to, anything that's kind of hidden or questionable that didn't get to the public. You have to look at that as a private investigator, going, why didn't the newspaper know about this more? What about the, below the fold the next day, second bullet hole in the ceiling found. Ooh, in a town like that plays heavy, man. You get votes from that stuff. I mean, there's other things besides everything. Everything we look at which is sad, Greg, is so dark, and there's always a cover-up, Greg. What we do, we look at cover-ups. We look at the how, why, and hows, and and then we're talking to me about just academy procedures from 30 some years ago, and I know that hopefully they're better, but it's how much do they learn? How much are they taught versus how much they should know? Or maybe it's education, and that's what comes down to this here. But if I was the chief of police, then this is a big time case, So then we go to the deep state or possibly or whoever, what he was doing, who got to who, So they go back to square one.
Now,
the only way to open this case up. Oh, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. Please continue.
The only way to open this case up is that we, as a group or us or whoever, have to put evidence forth to law enforcement, the DA, that we have a suspect. I mean, I'm telling you, it literally has to be a suspect. You have to hand them somebody on this.
See, I mean, why do we have to prove? Why does it have to be that we have to show that it was somebody else in order to just show that it wasn't David Crowley? I think that's where my mind kind of, I have this mental block or something up. It's like, wait a minute, shouldn't they just know that if it's not David Crowley, if they don't have the proof, if there's not, do we need to show them?
Well, the thing.
Go ahead.
Well, okay. Here's the thing: is they've had the proof in the DNA. They had a second and third DNA on the guns and the ammo and the magazine, correct? So they have what we want.
True.
That's what I'm trying to say.
True.
So when you look at all these cold cases, I've been around the groups that are the PIs and attorneys that are getting these guys off of death row. They do get some guys off. It's always on some DNA or something. It's usually the witnesses are either gone or old or dead or whatever. So it's DNA and things like that. And this is not that old of a case. There's still witnesses.
Right.
This is a good, fresh, cold case. Is that has to lead to them getting an indictment. And to get that indictment, you can put all the evidence in front of them if you could push them to do that one more step and say, this is Joe Blow's DNA and he just killed 10 people in New Jersey last week. Then you got it. I mean, so you're doing what they should have done, and then, like I said, the next move is you got to get a law firm behind you or somebody. Then there's to put, because there's stuff that you can't do or whatever, but that's basically everything's still there. I think to get this solved. And you're right. As longer this goes, this is the kind of case that totally qualifies to be looked at again, and people are going to look at that way. It's not just this happened. There's no way.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you go down, if you have the Kenneth Maines report? Can we look at page 7 for a second?
You know what? I'm on 7. I think I get my report is for some reason it's shorter than yours. Page 7. Okay, let me see. Okay, what's it say at the top?
So on page 7 at the top, it says the investigation. That's the title.
You know what? For some reason my pages are off.
Okay.
That's okay.
Do you have? Is yours the 27 pager? 27 page.
No, mine's a shorter one. You gave me a shorter one.
Did I really? Oh, okay. Well, I need.
Yeah, I got the one that's mine's the 24 pager.
That's weird. Maybe
yeah,
that's pretty
okay.
weird. Okay.
I'll try to find it.
Okay, because this is where the title of it is the investigation, and what I wanted to talk about is Kenneth Maines says that there is a 10-step process in which I like to use in looking at these cases, and then he kind of goes through what those 10 steps are, and I wanted to get your view on these 10 steps. What do you think about his 10-step process, and what do you think about him using the 10-step process in this case?
You know what? I don't have it in front of me. I can't even see what his 10-step process is.
Okay, let me read the 10-step process. Number 1 is the background. 2 is the reports and the research. 3 is the crime scene revisit. 4 is actually interviewing people. 5 is the evidence, the proof. 6 is the victimology. 7 is the suspectology. 8 is the criminal profiling / crime scene assessment. 9 is the timelines, and 10 is the deduction. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to text you. I'm going to text you this document so that way that you have it. if you want to go and read, look back at these 10-step process. But
Oh, sure, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I understand. What you know what? That's basic PI 101.
Okay.
That's so some of us do our reports differently, but that's pretty much covers it all. The thing is did he do it? No, he didn't do all that. He didn't interview people he should have interviewed. So the 10-step process wasn't fulfilled. But there's times maybe you don't have to on certain things. There's times you don't even have to talk to anybody. There's no witnesses or whatever. But everything he's put in there, and it just appears most of this work's been done for him. Lacking his access to any kind of labs or DNA or like that, and I mean you can do private stuff. You got to contact the family, but I just see this thing as being a kind of boilerplate.
Yeah.
I guess.
Let's see. So let me ask you: do you have a 10-step process?
No, not really. I mean, no. I mean, I go out. It's nothing. When I write the report, I have a process.
Mm-hmm.
But my investigation is, the biggest thing in cases is who do we talk to at what time that's not going to interfere or divulge anything to the next guy. We want to, you got to line up your ducks, and it's very important who you talk to, because we talk to the wrong person the first time, it blow your whole case. So that's a big part of it. And the big thing is, I think it's being really nice to people out there. I mean, that's kind of maybe aside of the subject, but you can go a long way with just being nice to people. They'll tell you anything. The other thing is that don't give law enforcement any information. I keep reports from law enforcement to the last minute. First off, they don't want to be bothered unless you really got something.
Mm-hmm.
But you also don't want them to interfere with something that this was a cover-up or a so-called conspiracy, that they know any of your moves. I mean, our reports go to law enforcement the very last. We double-check everything,
mm-hmm.
and then it goes off to them. And we start asking questions, and if we want to look at a case to get reopened or looked at, I got a case now which they've already turned it down for a manslaughter. I'm rewriting the report and hand it to them with more elements and some other stuff, and give it another shot. I still got open communication with them. I'm like, I'll be in contact, no problem. Let's know what you got, who you talk to. I mean, so then you start working with them. This situation here is different than a dog bite case. I mean, this guy, and he keeps praising them and everything else, forgetting about maybe he was the wrong guy for this case. He's definitely qualified, and I've seen it looks like he's probably fine.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we call a Hollywood case. It's going to publicity. A lot of eyes are going to look at it. It's deep state stuff. It's newsworthy, and it has been newsworthy. It's a Hollywood case. These are, and these are the hardest ones because everybody's looking at it.
What do you think What do you think would have happened to Kenneth Maines or anybody if they would have came out and said, "Yeah, there's definitely proof here that we should look deeper into this case"? What is the backlash that might have came towards a former police officer, a private investigator, etc.?
I've been there, so I know. I almost went to prison because of the same thing that he's doing, but more so, deeper, more personally. So, and it cost me. So I know. In this case here, and there's no internet back in 1995 like that, and all the stuff that's going on. So it's different. And I've had to put it. I've had to put it out there in the last couple of years myself, and it hasn't been too much. I can see a backlash. I think there's too many whistleblowers out there now that they're picking their battles on who they're going to go after for who's saying what. I think that's a big part of it. But they got eyes on you, me, this thing, Kenneth Maines, I'm sure, because this is on the internet. And if we say something that's really going to upset the turnip truck, they'll be knocking on our door. I know that. So I think what anybody you're doing yourself, Catherine, yourself, myself on this thing is there's a risk. I don't think it's I don't think it's a grave risk, I think that if it goes to wants to be this case gets toward a reopening, or there's questions coming into the police department, I think they're going to go ahead and they're going to go ahead and review what they've done, and they may come out with maybe some sort of we apologize thing, or say now we're working with this new evidence. I did that with the FBI in the Yosemite case. They came to me for evidence 2 years after I went to them, and the first time they wouldn't even listen to me. 2 years later, they're asking me for reports during Terry Stainer's trial, and I negotiated my evidence with them. I gave them what they wanted at the time I had it. Listen. At the end of the day, we don't want the bad guys, and that's what the cops want. So to do that, we have to, number one, not embarrass them. Number two, work with them, get the right people that talk the right talk and walk the walk, and it can work. It definitely works. It can definitely work. I mean, look, the CIA went to Sam Giancana for Castro. Okay, I mean, they use private people for these. We're in good shape, right? But I mean, it is the government. They don't use government doesn't use some secret agent man for CIA and FBI. They go down a step to guys like us, maybe, guys like Kenneth Maine, and they're the best guys. The government holds no liability, and you get your name in the paper, right? And then we're not in this just there's careers made out of the stuff we do. Maybe Ken's more of a career guy, but I think is that he could ask more questions. I think there's a way to do this case, get it reopened. I really do. I think because number one, the child involved is a big part of it. I think that the court of public opinion, man. I mean, there's a lot of people. There's just some things that weren't necessary, no matter what happens, and let's throw out. Everybody's crazy, and Philip Marshall, his ex-wife was, saying, he took all sorts of drugs, and she's banging the old sheriff. I mean, really. So I mean, what credibility is that? All right. I mean, to me, there's almost motivation on that one. I hate to say it, but here we have a different situation, and we can blame he's a combat veteran. We can blame that to this, that, and he's artistic. I mean, he went to film school. I've never been to film school. I got friends that have. And those guys are sharp. They know what they're doing. And he had a message, and he was killed for his message. I mean, all these are cover-ups. This one was it bothers me. The biggest thing, Greg, with this here, I think it was a Philip Marshall type of situation. I think we might have been calling it a day a little bit. Philip Marshall, we've kind of called it a day on that. I think a little more because we know that there's something. There's only so far we can go on that.
Right.
I think.
Right.
On this case here, I think a lot of people start chirping like a bird, and people they're going to cough up information, and I think there's a lot out there, and I think Kenneth could have gone ahead and done a little bit more on talking to people.
Yeah, and I was trying to text you some of this document actually, and of course
sure.
it wouldn't
I just
go
got it,
through.
yeah.
There's something.
What?
Hopefully you got the image because that's the image with the 10 steps. But I had tried to send you the full document, the PDF, and of course.
I got it right here.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So so we've already covered the 10 points. I'm going to look on page 8.
Right.
The police department did an outstanding job, in my opinion, on collecting and documenting the evidence in this case. That's a hard sentence to read. I mean, it's that just I don't know. It says, okay, I was not afforded.
Is that a third? Is that?
That's a
Is
quote.
The third time he's patronizing?
Yeah, that's probably the
but
third.
that's the third.
Yes.
Is that the third time he's patronizing the police department?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. You know what? Just okay. Since we're talking loosely today, a little bit about, this guy. Thank him for his service. He's a former Marine, and he becomes a police officer. He's been pretty much a regulated, organized, this way of the highway kind of guy. I mean, and he's a lot more robotic than I would be on this case. You know that. And that's what the cops are trained like. like my lieutenant used to say, you're like your police car, but you're not. You're not black or white. You're gray, and that's how we think. And the guys that do that, that's what makes those great detectives and everything. Is those guys. A lot of them are just by the box, or think out inside the box, and just by the letter of the law, not spirit of the law, and their mindset's like that, and they don't ask a lot of questions, and they don't see unless it hits them in the head. And that's a lot of this here. I can see that in the opening of his introduction to what he is and what he does. There's 2 pages on his resume on this thing. And I'm not saying he's a show off or he's a hot dog or anything else, but you don't need to do all that. I mean, I looked him up and I saw enough there. I mean, he's definitely been. He's regulated. He's not an out of the box kind of guy, Greg. And I think that's a lot of why he didn't come up with certain things or answers that we were looking for.
Yeah, that's too bad. That's really too bad there. Since we're kind of jumping around here, I did want to ask you one more question about, as a police, when the police first go to the residence. As a cop, how much of the 911 call, how much of that are you influenced by? Meaning, if you hear things in that 911 call, how more likely are you to maintain that whatever is said in the 911 call, generally?
Well, the dispatchers get the 911 call, so they'll get the screaming and yelling. There's been somebody that shot at me or whatever. What comes over the radio to us is very brief, and there'll be things that they'll say. Shots fired, two males down, suspect seen leaving south on Garfield Street. Units to respond, code 3. And that's all we need. We don't know. We don't know anything else. You just know. So this here was, this probably came 911 like a welfare call. 3 bodies. You saw it through the open window. As soon as you hear bodies, they probably dispatch detectives on that call right away too. Saw a supervisor. You'd pretty much have any. If there's a lieutenant on the street, he'd be responding to that call.
Is it possible to get the respondents between, because we have the actual 911 call text, but is it possible to get the correspondence between the dispatch and the cops that they're communicating with legally?
Yeah. You get dispatch tapes. Yeah.
You just have to know the dispatch office and put in the FOIA request type thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, because the case is adjudicated, you should be able to get the radio transmissions for the whole call.
Yeah, and that's a big deal, because in this case, one of the very first things that the neighbor says is that I think there's been a murder or a suicide. And so I'm wondering if that information would be relayed to the officers that are responding to this, that are going to show up here.
Yeah, absolutely. They would get that and more.
Yeah, they get the Christmas presents. They get all that. If there was a gun found, they would get that. If this neighbor claimed that it looked like the dog had eaten these bodies, would they get that? Things like that. So these are all the things.
Well, the neighbor.
Go ahead.
Oh, the neighbor just peeked through the window, right?
Yes, and was able to figure out the whole thing by just looking through this window. Yes.
Wait, back up. You're saying the neighbor figured out a bunch of stuff by just looking through the window?
Absolutely.
So I mean, but the neighbor was able to say the dog was eating the people through the window?
Yep,
Not really.
That it looked like the dog had eaten the heads. It looked like this
really?
was a murder or a suicide.
So the guy, he could see. And he said murder, suicide. Okay.
He said murder or suicide, but it's weird to mention either or for me.
You know what I mean? Cause I've never heard this before. Envision that you just walked up and you look through the window. I was 911. I see 3 bodies and this and that. And the dispatch is going to ask him questions, or as he's looking through the window. So there's some things that they asked. Maybe he said like, yeah, I see.
No, this is the
I
first
see a gun,
thing.
I see a gun.
The first thing, after giving their name, the first thing this person says is, I think there's been a murder or suicide next door. Those are the exact words. That's the first thing.
Okay. You know what's interesting is that it almost sounds like he had to be the guy who heard the shots. So him saying murder or suicide is interesting. Yeah, okay, then that's interesting because why would you? I would say I see 3 dead bodies in here. I mean, why? I don't know, murder or suicide. I mean, that's kind of strange a little bit.
I think it's strange,
yeah.
especially the very first things. But but it'd be curious to hear what.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
What would you? Okay, if you peeked through the window and saw 3 bodies laying there, you would say.
I would say help. I would say help. Please get somebody here as fast as you can.
Yeah,
there's a dog
there's 3 bodies. Something like that. Right. Sure, and that's what I mean. Yeah, 911. There's 3 bodies on here. Send whatever. Yeah, but this it looks like a murder suicide. Wow. I mean, that's why you talk to the neighbor. Who's this neighbor? I mean, I would go and talk to this guy now and right away and say, you saw this and why did you say? I'm just curious why you would say murder suicide, or there's your interviews.
Yep.
I mean, yeah. I mean, good point. Great, excellent point.
So after that, a little down in the same 911 call, this person also states that there's a pile of bodies and one like the head has been eaten off, and this person says, I suppose by the dog. My husband thought that they were dummies, but the hands look real. Now, this person, it's hard to believe that they could see 2 hands. There would only be 2 hands here, so they would have to be able to see David's hand, his left hand, which is possible, because if you look through the window, I'm sure you see that. And then Ranya's hand is the only other hand, which is not in a visible area for where this person could actually see them. But the fact that she also said that her husband said that they look like dummies is another weird thing too. There's a lot of weird things with this 911 call here. Do we know how close the neighbors were with David and his family? David had lived there for 1 year. The person who made this particular call, because both of them, there's a wife who makes this call, and then her husband also calls 911 sometime during this. So the husband is the one who sees dummies. His 911 call is very different from his wife's. So, but
wait. This is husband and wife. They're married, right?
They're married. They're in the same. They live in the same house.
Okay, and one of the wife goes over there first. And they're both calling 911?
They have both called 911. Yes, they have both called 911.
That's unusual. That's weird. Yeah. If you're with your wife, wouldn't you just have her call, or you just call 911? I mean, why would you call at the same time?
Yeah, that's a whole, it's a strange...
That's weird. That's weird, man.
Yeah.
I've been like in an accident, people call 911. If I see 1 or 2 people on the phone, I don't pick up 911. I mean, that's kind of strange.
Yeah. Yep. I'm gonna leave that.
That's the neighbor. Isn't that the neighbor that said they heard 3 shots earlier?
Yes. So you have 2 neighbors. The husband said that he had heard shots. When he was questioned later, he said that he had heard what sounded like 3 rapid fire shots. He wasn't able to give a certain time, but once he was kind of forced to kind of narrow down that date, he said it was around December 9th, which is way after all this. Then we have another neighbor who said that the shots probably happened sometime between Christmas Eve and New Year's Day. More than likely on Christmas Eve is what that person said. That's still only three shots. I mean, I guess if you add it up, that's 6 shots. One person heard 3 on December 9th. The other person heard 3 on somewhere between Christmas Eve. The only problem is The Crowley family is they're active. They're seen. The daughter's school sees all three Crowleys on December 19th. So the December 9th three rapid fire shots doesn't seem to have any relevance here, right?
Yeah, but the thing is that you have 6 shots, not 3. So how come you only hear 3 and not the other 3?
Right.
Okay. Well, that starts to go toward we're talking silencer or whatever, because you got 3 bots. If you have three people, you should have 3. You should only shoot 3 shots.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So then the other 3 shots, how come nobody heard 6 shots? That tells me now that starts to talk about we have a silencer involved. Right? And so what you're going to do is you're going to shoot the 3 shots. Hopefully, and that says, oh, okay, it's double homicide suicide. We got 3 shots. You got a silencer. Nobody would have heard any shots.
There you go.
So I mean, there's why if you're going to hear, if there's 6 shots in that house, there should have been 6 shots heard, because they heard 3 of them. There's no pillows there. There's nothing. So that tells there's a second shooter, which we kind of suspected maybe anyway. I think it could be a second shooter. I don't know. I mean, that's
now. Let's
shots?
say, yeah. Let me since you're good on those three shots there. What if just as speculation, right? We're just kind of guessing here, but
sure.
If a silencer was used, then they probably wouldn't have heard any of those shots. Maybe it's possible the 3 shots came from David Crowley's gun, or maybe they came from David Crowley's house because they were shooting back at somebody. Right? Because we know David Crowley's gun didn't have a silencer, as far as we know.
Well, okay, let's say that they shoot Camille twice in the head, then they shoot the baby. All right.
Mm-hmm.
David comes upon this, and he shoots 3 shots. Then they shoot him, and they don't hear that.
Mm-hmm.
What if it was? What if he did? What if he came into a self-defense position? I mean, this is something we didn't talk about before. Is the neighbors only recorded hearing 3 shots, not 6, but we got 6 rounds spent in the house, and it wasn't 3 shots. 20 days, in between 20 days later, it wasn't 3 shots and 3. There's I mean, really. So we only have 3 shots heard. He would have heard 6 shots. So maybe he came. Maybe those guys, the knuckleheads, were at the house, and they were. There's no sign of forced entry. I mean, the back door was cracked, which means that was an open door. They could went in and out. They went out that way. But you only hear 3 shots, but there were 6.
I think.
And the 2 shots 2 shots didn't hit anything.
Yeah, Catherine is pretty much making that same point. I don't know, Catherine, if you can.
Oh, good.
If you can join us here, Catherine, at any point, please definitely.
Yeah, it'd be great to hear Catherine's voice. Yeah. So you made up. That was a very good point, Greg.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to interrupt because you guys are so good right now.
Go.
You're just saying that. Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. No, I miss you guys. I want you on here.
I know. I was asking Sophia too, and she's cooking dinner. Oh man, she's making enchiladas and rice. I'm like, oh yum. But yeah, I was just basically saying to Greg that it's like the whole bringing up the whole 3 gunshot thing. It happened way earlier in the month. We know that David and Camille were accounted for after the time that they said they heard these shots. So why is it normal protocol? Maybe that's what I should be asking. Is it normal SOP that an officer would still include that in their report, or would they let why would it be written if they know that the time frame is the family was accounted for after these gunshots were supposedly heard?
Well, the officer who wrote the first initial report, that's the information he got. But I can tell you, I'm doing a case right now where there's a whole date that's off just from the police officer's report. It happens. So either it's a mistake or they changed the other report, or then the report has a different date. You know, because there's a big timeline in there.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I mean, we are confirmed there's 3 shots heard by neighbors, right?
Right. I think they heard them. Something on? What did they say? Like the first week or 2 of December, Greg? I'm trying to remember.
Yes.
It was like really early in. Yeah, and we know that David and at least Kamel, maybe I don't know. Okay, when Sophia and I did a lot of tracing of the telephone conversations and following the timeline for David and Kamel's phone calls, David's phone calls and communication via his cell phones stopped it, real early. Kamel's actually went further. She, I think, was something like December 15th, which was after the date where they supposedly heard these gunshots. So, you would think, maybe I'm wrong, one would think that, that whole idea of 3 gunshots being heard would just kind of be kicked to the side. The police would then in their report state, the neighbor said this, but then we found out this. But it doesn't seem to happen at all. They just kind of leave it.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, maybe we even question if those were even gunshots on the night. Maybe you heard something else,
Yeah, Sophia was saying, too, you're right. That's a good point. Sophia was saying maybe they were fireworks.
Yeah, I mean, that's the place. That area is kind of rural enough. Somebody might go in the back. I think somebody go in the backyard and shoot off a couple rounds. I think could shoot off a couple rounds. I mean, but the second time, the second date for those gunshots, those are interesting.
Yeah, and Sophia just put here in the chat on YouTube where she states, we found David's communications stopped on November 26th, and Kamel's communications stopped on December 19th, according to their cell phone records. There was nothing, David didn't make a call or anything after December 26th. And we actually have no one really saying that they saw them other than people who are part of the Gray State team. And then Kamel's later, which, I really find odd. And I know this is not even Kenneth Main's report. See, this is why I stay out of it, because I go off on tangents.
Yeah, but no, you got to remember, you guys brought something up too, is that maybe that David was not around when they were killed. Maybe he was drug off and kept because he went out of communication. Yeah, he went out of communication. That doesn't sound right. They got a hold of him and maybe held the family hostage. Okay, and then what happens is that the 3 gunshots on the 9th are Kamel, right? Has 2 of them. The baby has 1. They drag him back, right? And they go ahead and they shoot him. But what I'm saying is that if there's 3 gunshots before, but the communications are what, almost a month apart as far as their cell phones. Yeah, I mean, Kamel was till the 15th of December, right?
Sophia's found it was the 19th of December. Yeah, and here's the thing. From a medical perspective, their bodies in the state of decomp that they're in, it's in the early phases, early to moderate. And this is kind of where I'm really upset with the coroner, because the coroner knows better, and they write early to moderate. And, the police walk in, and in every single report says advanced stage of decomposition, advanced. Okay, they have no clue what they're saying. Advanced would be where they actually start to become skeletonized. You don't really see that in other than the areas where maybe the dog actually did chew on some. And I don't believe the dog ate all of it, but I do believe the dog chewed on some of them. And there you're going to see quote-unquote skeletonization. However, they're in an early to moderate state of decomp, so they were only killed probably, and this I got from another medical examiner I went and I spoke with personally, and as well as what I knew, because I'm not trying to top myself, just letting you know. I have a deputy coroner friend, and then I got to go hang out with them at the Sacramento coroner's office, medical examiner's office. So I got to see this stuff firsthand. And so when you're looking at these bodies, you're like, this is not advanced decomp. This is early to moderate. So they were killed for, the medical examiner said 4 to 7 days, 10 days at most prior to being found, which then moves their date of death somewhere around the 7th to the 10th of November, or I mean January, maybe the 10th to okay, they were found on the 17th, so maybe the 10th to the 12th or 13th of January. So their bodies had not been there that long. However, looking at their bodies, you see where they did sustain some form of blunt force trauma. And David's body, and Camille and Rania still had food in their stomachs. Just nothing that the bodies show and speak match up to anything that is written in their reports. They don't match.
Well, it's like with Rania's broken rib. How did she sustain a broken rib?
Right, and I was I had asked this medical examiner that too, and that was another thing I wanted to just briefly touch on, was where her rib is fractured. That is an extremely difficult area to fracture a rib. Mm-hmm. It's up underneath the armpit, mm-hmm. So it's in that area, and how that just doesn't fracture without some form mm-hmm. of outside pressure. And you would think that if their medical examiner, Dr. Lelinski, she did state that there's a fracture on the third rib, blah blah blah, but the police and no one takes it farther, which that should have been a huge flag where they're mm-hmm. like, wait, this is off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Greg.
No, that's great. That's great.
What I'm afraid of, from looking at this, the suffering. When I'm trying to, like I said, put myself in that house. If I was the person that looked through the window, what do I see? And if I've seen the crime scene photos, of course, is there's I just don't, like I said, I just don't see it as a snap decision. And twice, shooting two to three shots to his wife's head, 2 for sure. I mean, like I said, that one shot's one thing. 2, 3, that's hatred. The thing, everything on the wall. I'm thinking, in the time of death doesn't match when the bullets were heard. I mean, maybe those were warning shots back then. I don't know, maybe the family might have been held hostage for a week. I don't know.
Right.
It's David. Was David brought back later? The crucifixion position. The baby's arm. Being off. I mean, there's just so much more to it, and I don't know. I think like I told Greg earlier, I think that this is a case of death. I think there's a shot to get a case like this opened up, and I think it's because they use some real amateur idiots to do the hit down at a certain level. I think in some ways, I do.
Right, and in the reports too, when I was reading, because one of my first questions at the very beginning was, why did they not do a laser or a string as part of Joe Cooksley? And then I'm reading in the reports later where he says, hey, do you want us to do this to get trajectory to try and find out how and where this blood spatter was coming from? And it was the police, and I can't remember which officer it was that stated it, but one of them wrote back and says, no, we don't need that. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's crucial. It's crucial evidence to know where these shots were coming from, or if they believe they were shots, where did these injuries occur, but they didn't find that important. And I'm like, whoa, okay, it just boggles my mind.
It's just laziness. I don't know what it is, but the round that was shot in the ceiling. I keep going back, and the things that I've looked at, and you guys have looked at, these suicides and there's homicide, suicides, what have you. There's no hesitation shots. It's basically one shot. That's it. It's not one in the ceiling, one in the floor. It tells me that tells me there was a struggle. Something didn't go right. Either it was a warning, and I hate to say that David's there. They put the gun under the little girl's rib and break her rib. Then they shoot over her head, or something. I mean, it's to make him suffer before they killed him. Mm-hmm. I don't know. This crime scene is too violent for a murder, for double murder, suicide.
Right.
This is on. I think about this. I think about Manson's Helter Skelter, what they did there with Sharon Tate and everybody. This is almost on the same realm, and we know that was a murder. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
It's too damn it's too messy, I think, Catherine. You know?
And I so agree with you. And the thing, too, is on my video on the blood spatter, you see movement. There is somebody, and I'm assuming it's probably Camille, but as someone is being hurt, they are moving. It's like, and I'm sure you understand this, when you walk in or you see something, immediately you're like you start to piece together what could have happened. Right. And in my head, I'm watching her trying to dodge. Either is she being beaten? Well, I see a lot of medium velocity. I don't even know if I cannot see high velocity from gunshots. And if there are 4 gunshot wounds to the heads, people's heads, there should be high velocity everywhere in that hot house, and there's none. But yet there's a lot of cast off and medium velocity. And as I'm watching this movement of this blood and the directions, and you're watching the flows, and you're imagining this poor woman trying to get away from who's hurting her, and yet that's not even covered. It's not even thought of in.
Well, yeah, exactly. The other thing too that comes on to that is, remember the size of the pieces of skull that were laying around. Okay, so when you get I researched all the .40 caliber photographs on Google Images I could find, and I don't find any that blows out on an exit wound blows out a 3 by 2.5 inch piece of skull.
Thank you.
All right, you don't see that. But blunt force trauma or beating somebody with a baseball bat will dislodge chunks of skull.
Yes, and what gunshot wound is going to leave straight lines on skin that is attached to the skull? What dog is going to leave lots of straight lines? Not even one. There are straight lines all over the flesh that's still attached to that skull piece. And they have an open knife at that scene with all 3 of their blood on it, and you see straight edges on skin. I'm sorry, it's not hard to deduce that had to have come from either that knife or another sharp object, but it wasn't a bullet and it wasn't a dog, and it wasn't a dog. But yet they don't even look at that. And I'm just like, oh, goodness, I want to just shake them. Sorry, being violent. Don't need to be.
Hey, you know what? You're in a violent world. It's okay. Well, I mean, it's true.
Oh, it's just so frustrating. Oh, I'm sorry, Greg. I took you way off topic from the Maine's report, and it was so interesting. Okay, I'll let you guys go back to Maine's because
we were way off on the Maine's report, anyways. But I mean, it was kind of like, okay, I think we've covered a lot, covered as much as really I wanted to on the whole Maine's thing. I mean, we could go on and on about how great he thinks that the police did, and so much of this, and how David, even on reading on page 9 of the 27 pages by December 2014, David was obviously feeling the pressure of his attempt to make the movie. It was equally obvious through his emails and interviews with people who worked on this project with him that he was passionate about the project. It also appeared to me that he was frustrated with people that didn't have the same intense passion or energy. David became increasingly withdrawn, it seems, which is not true. I mean, where is he getting this if it's not from Eric Nelson's film? Is he talking with people who worked with David? Does he take that time to talk with them. I mean, that would have been good, because this is stuff that they would have told him. This is the stuff that they told us, that they told me. David was in a dark place, blah blah blah. Everything was bad, and I'm just wondering, all of this stuff that Kenneth Maines is talking about David, is this just is he just repeating what's in the 94 pages of police reports? I mean, I don't know.
Well, also he watched the video. He watched the video. He's coming to some of his own conclusions and opinions of what he's saying. I mean, he's talking about that his wife seemed to adopt his anti-government ideologies, and so he's starting to look at her.
Right.
And it's like he goes back and forth, but he writes. Everything after the murders in Comel's blood, it leaves David Crowley as the person more likely than not responsible for these homicides. So it's written in her blood, so he's the killer? That's basically what he's saying.
That is.
Just because it's misspelled, which we talked about, that David would not. This guy was meticulous. He's a filmmaker. I'm a TV guy. I make sure I go over everything. I dot my I's and cross my T's as much as I can. I don't want to look like an idiot. This guy was not an idiot. He would have spelt that right. If that was spelt correctly, it would take half of what we're talking about away. It would have burst our bubble. I'm telling you right now. That being misspelt, that's no way. That was an illiterate part of the sloppy hit. They screwed that up. I think that's a real big. I think it's a huge smoking gun.
Yeah, that is.
I do. I really do.
I agree on that.
Filmmakers. Yeah, I mean, these guys. You gotta be perfect. I mean, look at any of these guys. It's just. I mean, even if it's a lousy movie, it doesn't mean anything. The guys are perfectionists. Yeah, really.
Yeah, you're right. And how many times in any of David's writing samples that you even see in the house, how many times do you see him spell a word wrong?
There you go.
I didn't see it.
He doesn't, right?
He doesn't. No.
There, you know what? See, guys. That's how we're moving on to that. This is important. These are these little nuances that this guy would not even think about. I mean, it's like, and I know this. I've seen his Facebook stuff. He likes intelligible. Absolutely. We don't make mistakes, but no, not. We don't make them like that. That thing was spelled. It was almost like it was an anger on the wall too.
Yes.
It wasn't like he would have wrote it nicer. I mean, this was a sacrificial religious thing. If they were going to blame him on that as part of some ideology or whatever, and it's not. No, it's a sloppy crime scene. And yeah, I think the more I looked at it, they were looking for things. They got nervous. They got out of there pretty quickly afterwards. The missed shots, the missed shots into the ceiling in the basement, whatever. They got to get a question the heck out of that.
Yep, and that's always been one of the things where the people that came back into the house on January 19th, that's why they've always been the suspicious persons, because why are you returning here? Why are you here at this house at this early stage? That's always been weird. I mean,
it's easy to answer, Greg. It's because they have 6 spent cartridges and only 5 rounds are accounted for.
So they need to add things. They need to bring things in there.
Well, they need to find it. They brought it in there, or they need to find it.
Yeah.
See, okay. Here's what happened: is the round at number 57 was unaccounted for, correct?
Well,
so that was the round in the ceiling.
In the attic, yes, that was
correct.
In the attic.
In the attic, right? Okay, so that was originally not accounted for, but they had six casings.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And they had extra unspent rounds. They had 6 casings and 5 bullets. They got.
I think 4.
It was supposed to be.
They had 4 bullets.
Okay, originally it was 4. It was 1 to the baby, 2 to Kamel, and 1 to David. Okay, but they found the one in the basement right away. Okay.
But they didn't find the one
Okay.
tied to the daughter
Really?
until 2 days later. That's a different one from the ceiling. That one rolled out of the carpet a couple days later.
Oh, okay. Oh, that it did.
Yeah. So there's two bullets.
Can
Go
I
ahead,
add something
Kath.
here real quick,
Go ahead.
Greg?
Yes.
And the only reason I want to bring this up is my deputy coroner friend on one of the scenes that I went to with them. It was a murder and it was a shooting, and I don't begrudge the police for not seeing that bullet that had Ranya's blood on it, the one that was in the rug, because at that scene that we were at, it was really difficult to find all of the spent rounds. This particular person was shot 5 or 6 times, and so not even the deputy coroner could find them all at first. So sometimes it's easy to miss a fragment that's stuck in a rug somewhere, but yet at the same time, it would be hard to say where that was. Maybe that fragment rolled underneath the couch. We don't know. All we know is that when they were rolling up the rug and when they were trying to move it, the fragment fell out. So we don't know where it was. And then in that case, I don't know. Should they have moved it? The couches? I'm just assuming. Don't know. Under the chair, we just don't know, unfortunately.
Well,
but I'm
yeah.
sorry. I want to add this one little tidbit also about 57.
Go ahead.
I know I beat things into the ground, and it's like I am just too opinionated at times. But number 57, I do not believe that the ceiling was shot at the beginning, just because there were a myriad of police officers, at least 10, 5, 6. Between 5 and 10 police officers and investigators that were there. There were, 4 or 5 crime scene techs that were there. And then the cleaning crew, which showed up afterwards. And cleaning crew, they're going to be looking everywhere because they have to clean everything. So they're going to be looking up. They're going to be looking down because there's blood by the door. There's blood on the other wall. All around this area of the front door when you walk in, where the ceiling is. And then for me, what tells me right away that there was no bullet hole in the ceiling on January 17th is because on February 18th, when was it Detective Bone, or was that who went in, Greg? There were 2 detectives. I think it was Detective Bone, but it could have been the other one if there was another one with the letter B. But he states his exact words were an obvious defect. Mm-hmm. He opened the door and he saw an obvious defect before he even entered the house. Now, if it's that obvious, and while they're going through everything and they're meticulously looking for, crime scene evidence, you're going to see that hole. Someone that day was going to see that hole. Someone who came to clean that house would have seen that hole. But the fact that this obvious defect was missed for a month by everybody, and then all of a sudden Chris Klein calls up and says, I think you guys missed something. Red flags everywhere for me.
Yep, and you're talking about Detective Brian Bone, and Detective Sean McKnight was the second one. So when they both walked into the house 1 month later on February 18th, 2015, that's what they saw. That was one of the first things that they saw. They decided that they were going to look up because somebody told them to, and boom, there it is. There's a big hole.
So what would be okay? So if we go with that, what would be the reason they would put a hole in there, shoot another hole to be discovered later?
Great question, because yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
Here we go. Because at this point they still had 6 casings and 5 fragments.
Right, exactly. That's what I was saying. So they couldn't recover the other bullets, so they put that one in there to match up with the 6 casings.
I totally agree with you. Totally agree with that.
Okay. Well, okay, but what I'm
there's
saying
no blood
is
on that. But there's no blood on it, so.
Yeah,
All of the other ones
there was
do?
DNA, there was Kamel's DNA's on the bullet in the ceiling.
No.
No, that was David's DNA, but no blood, no tissue. Just
Oh, okay. So there's just DNA, no blood, no tissue. Right. So, right. So, okay. So that didn't strike any part of his flesh or anything else. That just his fingerprint could be DNA. And we got the one into the to the basement also. So we basically we have we got 2 misses.
Right.
There's 2 misses. There's
Exactly.
Kamel.
except
Okay, so
for
there's 2 misses.
I'm sorry.
Why is it just it doesn't misses don't happen. I mean, this is it's preposterous. It's preposterous. Like it is, 2 misses, one in the no blood or anything else on it, and there's the one that went into down to the basement. So there's there's twice the Kamel's head. That's what in 3 shots. And the neighbor. Let's just forget about the date. They've heard 3 shots shot, but it was at 2 different times, which really blows me away. But we'll just say they heard 3 shots. They didn't kill somebody in the house and leave them for 20 days. I mean, so there's 3 shots, but there's 6 bullets.
And the other thing that I find interesting that the police didn't even question is the fact that these were all hollow points. Now, I myself personally, I shoot hollow points, and not at people though. Okay, but I use hollow points.
Thanks
in
for
my
clarifying.
gun.
Yeah.
Let me clarify that. But when I retrieve these at the range, and either outside range or whatever, when I've and you can't always, so I don't want people think I can always retrieve them.
Yeah.
But when I find them, and even when you see people who have retrieved these, even at practice shots, with hollow points, they mushroom the minute they hit something, and as they mushroom, they're gathering that material that they're hitting, and then it's caught into the fragment. And so if this number 57 which they are trying to get us to assume that it's David, the quote-unquote bullet that killed David, it would have gone through his tissue, it would have gone through his brain, his hair, something would have been gathered in that before it hit that ceiling. So it would have had his flesh, tissue.
They're just saying his DNA was on it. They didn't say anything about his blood or tissue on it. So they're just saying DNA. And that could be because he touched the bullet.
Right, that's the problem. That's what I'm saying. That's the huge problem for me, because they should have found it, but they found nothing.
Well, like I said, is that I looked at the trajectory, what I could see from the crime scene sketch, and it looks like it was shot. And I'm saying it looks like it was possibly shot from where that Raina was at, the baby. Like it would have been shot over her head as a warning to her father, because there's nothing on that but the DNA. Anybody could have touched the bullet. David definitely did, and so there's I don't see a hesitation shot. Like I said, I almost see a short hostage. I see a submarine. I see some things going on there, that don't make sense. And that's 2. It's basically a lot of it's due to 2 misses. I mean, it's just wow. There's a couple different other reasons that the bullet went up into the ceiling, and I'm not satisfied with that,
Yes, I mean, oh my gosh, if I could be jumping up and down right now, well, I can, but
you can.
What you're saying is so true. And here's the thing, too, that the police officers, the investigators didn't take into consideration. They're saying, the assumption that is put into these reports, okay, they imply, which they're hoping people infer, and unfortunately a lot of people do, that David shot himself and that was his bullet. But I have said this so many times before, if David, his body, they're saying he dropped where he landed after he shot himself, and this is how he fell. And I'm calling, excuse my French, I'm sorry, Greg, but complete and utter bullshit. So here he is. He's supposedly right-handed. It goes in behind by his right ear, exits out the left, which then is going to be the window. So how does it exit from the left side and then go toward the window and then all of a sudden make this really cool twist and turn around, then turn around again and shoot back up into the ceiling? And it's just so frustrating, because I'm like, it's so obvious by his body location and where this, like you were stating, the trajectory in the ceiling of that bullet, there's
Right.
no way they match up.
No, it doesn't at all. That's terrible. No, it looks like it's coming from the other side of the room. You know, I don't know the trajectory on the when it went down through the floor. I don't. But even then, I mean, that shooting down to the floor is almost a warning shot. I mean, you know, it's just like somebody, you know, they got the drop on them, and you know, something. It just wasn't that quick. You know. But there's 3 shots heard, but there's 6 bullets that have been shot in that house.
Oh, it's just so sad.
Yeah.
Doesn't add up.
No, there's so many things that don't add up. Absolutely.
Catherine, you were talking about a case similar to what happened with item 53, where they missed a bullet, similar to the one that they missed in the in this carpet. How did they find that in that case that you were talking about? How did they find the bullet that they were missing, and how long did it take?
Well, the deputy coroner, what they did, because they were on scene and they're double checking everything, all I can tell you is what they saw, and it's when we got back to the office, they got all their photos, did all of this stuff, and as they get back and they're looking at the pictures that they took, they then noticed an extra wound on the body that they didn't see on scene. And this just goes to show that you kind of have to give everybody in this field some benefits. You know, you have to give them some leeway. You can't always pick up everything when you're first there. And so that's why they're looking at their photos to see if they missed something. And then they noticed that there was an extra bullet wound in the abdomen that they had missed, because it was, you know, really pretty close, I guess. And they're like, oh shit. So then they call the officers on scene and they're like, okay, look for another either casing or bullet fragment or something, just to make sure, because at that time they didn't move the body. They got there, went on scene, took their photos and did all this stuff. And it was kind of like a joint effort between the deputy coroner and then the investigators on scene. And the main difference is they knew this was a murder. They had already had their suspect arrested. They found him on scene with the gun, etc., etc. But yeah, they found their mistake by looking at the photos that they took.
Interesting. Okay. Good to know. Let's see. We have one of our good friends here posted a couple questions. Did Maines suggest staging in his report? Then this person points to page 9. I find the following looking at the crime scene photos that have relevance to me. Allah Akbar written in blood on the wall. This is done to either stage this scene to look like something it isn't, because it is the motive for the event, or it is for shock value. So, yeah, there are a lot of things. Here we go, page 14. Here's another one. Go to the ascent paragraph. He theorizes David killed Kamel and then used the laptop after, and that is why her blood is on the keypad. It's all we're talking about this staging, you know, whether it's David Crowley or whether it's somebody else. That's pretty much is what it comes down to, is a stage scene. And the problem with thinking that it was David Crowley is we're just not seeing it here. There's just really nothing that would help us prove, you know, or help, pretty much to see why David Crowley could be guilty. And I mean I definitely think that everybody who has looked into this case is open to that at some level we want to see, where is the evidence, where is this proof here that would show that David Crowley is guilty, and we keep coming back to that.
Well, yeah, you remember when we found David Crowley's blood in the kitchen, and there was a couple other places, but it was very little. Remember, it was just a little drop.
Well, there were drops in the kitchen, but they don't know whose.
Right.
They don't, but they never tested it. So
yeah,
that's
Crowley's blood. That was David Crowley's blood. They tested it.
No, They never in the kitchen on the kitchen tile. I'm trying to remember
Yeah,
where.
yeah.
they
No,
were.
in,
I'll
on
have
the
to see.
dishwasher.
No, that was
Uh,
never tested, as far as I remember here, because
I
that
thought
was
it, you know
item.
what? Because
No, that was
I
item
thought it was.
22. Was it 21 and 22? I think, right?
I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah,
We
I got
discussed
that. I got that
the
right
fact
here.
that if a guy, yeah,
You're correct, Greg. Yeah, the only blood that was ever found, unfortunately, they did not test. They took samples, but they didn't test it, so we don't know
Oh,
whose blood that was. But the only blood that they did test, and the only blood that was found, other than Ranya's being on her bullet fragment, all belonged to Kamel. You find none of David's blood in that house at all.
Just on the magazine, I think, which is item 1B.
Oh, you're correct.
Yeah,
Yes, you're
item
correct.
1,
Which is
1B.
really odd. How did his blood get on the magazine in
Not on
a
the gun.
fingerprint?
Right.
That makes some sense.
Yeah. And then 23, I'm gonna look at what 23 is here. 23 is Kamel. Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, there's a couple places where they say that they're not sure, that they can't be excluded, but it's not too many places there. But the ones in the kitchen, they did not, they swabbed them, yeah, but they never tested, and that's what's weird. And
oh man,
I'm gonna look to see and make sure that because we had just talked about this like a week or so ago, but
I mean, it's, you know, the thing is you got these little places of blood all over this house, right? You got some is Kamel, one is David's. They didn't test the ones in the kitchen. You know, if somebody had, you know, if you shoot somebody, you're not necessarily going to blood dripping off you and go in the kitchen.
Mhm.
But if, like I said, with the knife, that situation there, you know, moving the body carefully, posing the body after it was shot, there'll be blood you got on your fingers. You know, blood post tense of the shootings is very questionable.
Mhm.
Did he shoot his daughter and Camilla walk around the house, or did she shoot him and walk around the house? I mean,
Well,
you know, that's you know, that's
here's
interesting.
here's what's really strange about what you're talking about here, because of those two things, the one on the dishwasher and the one by the dishwasher. It is weird that
Right.
they kept a lot of the other samples so that they could come
Uh-huh.
back to them, right? But these
Sure.
are item 21 and 22. They did not keep those two.
Yeah.
Meaning that if we ever got into a spot where we could have
Uh-huh.
actually tested them, there's no way that we
Right.
can, because they don't have those
That's
two.
important because, you know, it's like I said, we're finding little spots of blood from Kamel, and there's one or two David. Were those ones on the dishwasher, David? You know, I mean, we're not finding a lot of blood. Like there would be a lot of blood if it was a brutal fight and force and stabbings and everything. Why is there blood? And if he was shot or wounded, or let's say he wounded himself and decided, there would be more blood than that.
Right.
I mean, having very little blood tells me that somebody was in there carefully doing something. You get my drift? Because it's a bloody, messy crime scene, but now you find a little bit here and there, like a little fingerprint. You know what? That's the kind of crime scene. If there's a little fingerprint, there's a lot of fingerprint blood. That's what it is. Why is there so little everywhere else? There should be no blood anywhere else except the living room. Technically, right?
That's right.
Well, and even in the
Right.
living room, there are areas where you can see like a void pattern. There's cast off by the door and by the tree,
Mhm.
and then that whole section where that chair should also have caught some of that cast off, but it
Sure.
didn't. And then you've
Okay.
got that huge
Yeah.
empty spot, and then you've got cast off on the wall right next to that. And then next to Ranya's room, you see transfer. You see this little
Right.
smear of blood transfer. They didn't even question that. And I'm just like, whoa.
Well, it's how much did a dog drag around too, maybe, but not onto a dishwasher.
Right, and the dog definitely, you're right, and the dog definitely can't reach up by a light switch and then up there by the light switch
Yeah.
by her door.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, that's what I mean is if okay, let's just say David shot his daughter and his wife and daughter, and he was like, okay, I'm going to do some things. If he did anything to move them, I mean, there's not, like I said, it's just you know, when you cut your finger or something, you hardly touch anything and you don't feel it. Next thing you got blood everywhere you didn't even think you had it. Imagine if you just went through that and you got two bodies there. There's no way. A little bit of blood, that means that's the surgical part they screwed up on. I mean, they went around looking for some things, and that's how the blood got around there. And there wasn't there's a little bit of blood on, I think, on the computer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's because they probably changed your glove. I mean, they just weren't careful enough, because there should be a lot of blood. That's how I mean, that right there is a huge red flag for me. Makes sense, though, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're so right. And thank you for putting this out there from an actual professional's point of view. And then you see the other transfer patterns of blood behind the chair on the floor. Where it looks like, well, I don't know. I'm assuming here, and
right.
It looks like it was some type of plastic tarp, like if you imagine something being rolled up and it had a bloody edge and it hits that spot, you roll it and it hits the next spot.
Yeah.
It's not typical blood patterns on that floor, but they don't question. They question none of it.
Yeah, it's not like it's not a natural pattern.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, any final words here on Kenneth Maines or anything else that we've talked about here? We've covered a great deal of topics. So.
Well, before I jump off here, I'm so sorry, Steve. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Let's keep going. You're right.
Well, before I jump off, because I'm going to jump off here real quick, I just want to say thank you, Steve, for listening to this first part. Like Sophia just said, she said, can't wait to go back and listen to this again. I've missed some key information on this call. And, I agree. Thank you for bringing light to this case and for giving insight that the rest of us just don't have. And thank you, Greg, for doing this. And I hope you guys have a great night.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for chiming in, because you bring a lot of common sense to this thing.
Well, thanks. I try.
You do, absolutely. I told Greg we got to do this more often. The three of us, we listen. I'm as bad as interrupting as you are. I'm terrible, but I do listen. I feel bad about that too. I'm like, I gotta shut up. But no, absolutely, it works out great, I think.
Yeah, and that's what's so funny. It's like, and I know I interrupt all the time. That's why I always tell everybody, tell me to shut up, because I'm going to stop talking. Just say, Catherine, shut up. Anyway, but thanks, you guys. You've been great. And next time for sure, Sophia. And she made enchiladas and Mexican rice for dinner. I'm like over here drooling. I get to eat vegan pizza and she's eating enchiladas. It's not fair. Yeah, so we definitely need to do this again. So you guys have a great...
All right.
Thank you, Catherine.
You too. Thank you.
Awesome. Always great to have Catherine on there too. It
makes it fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, my friend, I'm going to wrap this one up here. Any final words here? So if you had to grade Kenneth Maines, would you give him a grade right now, or would you plead the fifth on that?
You know what? I would say that nothing new under the moon, man. I mean, I don't see anything on there that did anything more for me than looking at the police reports and the pictures and everything else. There was nothing. There absolutely was nothing new. I mean, but that's okay. That's why we're here.
That's right.
I still have my book out there, Ultimate Prey. So if anybody's interested, it's on Amazon. And that's about it. Maybe we'll talk about Mariposa here next time.
Yes, definitely. We're going to come back and talk about that. Ultimate Prey. Let's see. Ultimate Prey. And just type
Greg,
in...
you have books out there too. Greg's an excellent author, so you got to plug your books there, buddy. You got some good stuff.
I know, I'm really bad at that stuff.
I am too. I tell you, if I can sell 3 a month on Amazon, I'm a lucky guy. I wrote it for the story. With labor and love, huh?
Yeah, well, this is a great story here. You can get it on Kindle too. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
And the
sure.
paperback. Yeah, definitely want to get the new paperback on that one. That would make a great Christmas present. I will talk to my wife about that. All right, my friend.
Oh, cool.
Go ahead and
All
hang
right.
on here, and I'm going to shut this live stream down.